To enter the layer editor for any particular layer, we open up the instruments strip to see its layers, and then we swipe up in the layer strip or tap the button at the top, and up pops the layer editor. This consists of the synthesizer and the menu bar. And the menu bar's got some controls which I'll come to in a second. In the synthesizer, we have the oscillator, the filters, the envelopes, modulators, and the mixer. And I'll go through each one of these in turn shortly. In the menu bar, we have the close button. Closes it. You can also close by swiping down if you've got the option on. We have the icon, the button for the clipboard, which is a useful shortcut quite often. We have buttons to add and delete layers, so we don't have to go out to the strips to do that. We have the layer name, which again we can long press on to rename if we want to. We have the modulation matrix, which we'll talk about later. And then we have the button to show the arpeggio sequencer, and a button to set and restore MIDI controller templates for this layer. Templates are complex. Templates are an advanced feature, and probably I'll deal with those in another layer. Or I think they're talked about in the manual. The triangle is the panic button, and the solo button, and the manual, the help button. So those are the buttons in the menu. Let's add another layer. Also, you have buttons to go between layers here next to the name. You can also swipe on the menu bar to change layers as well. So let's change some controls so that we can see things happening. So if I swipe to layer 1, layer 2, layer 1, layer 2. So individual bits of the synth. Let's start with the oscillator. In the layer editor, if you double tap on the background, it will zoom in to wherever you tapped. Double tap again to zoom out. You can also pinch zoom if you're careful, and you can scroll it down to where you want to be. So we'll look at the oscillator by zooming into it. So this is the oscillator shown now, and it consists of the dual oscillator, which has two waveforms that can morph between each other, a modulation mixer, which can take the various modulation sources and sum them together, the envelope time for A moving towards B in the oscillator, and the phase of B, which we can play with in a minute, tuning, coarse and fine, tuning knob in the layer. Double tapping on anything sets it to its default value, but with the tuning dials, if you tap on the tuning dial, if you tap on the fine dial, it'll set it to the nearest semitone. If you tap again, double tap again, it'll set it to 0. If you tap on the coarse dial, it'll set it to the nearest octave. Double tap again to set to 0. Then you have portamento, and you can mix in some white noise. So let's concentrate on the oscillator to start with. So the oscillator is a dual oscillator. It has two waveforms that run simultaneously, and you can morph between the two waveforms. The waveforms called A and B, and A can travel towards B, and B's phase can change while A is traveling towards B. And so let's have a look. At the moment we've got a simple sine wave on both oscillators. Let's put a square wave on oscillator A and keep the sine wave on B and drag A towards B. So there you are, you can hear them changing. And in the center of the view there, you can see the waveform changing shape. So you can do that automatically as well by setting up an envelope time, A to B time here, and telling it how fast you want it to travel towards B. So this is going to take 1 second. A travel towards B. That's the same as doing it manually, like that. Also, in layer, you'll see sometimes these little buttons on the side of a dial with 1, 10, and 100, and those are modifiers to the time. They're the range modifiers for the dial. And in this case, you can go from 0 to 1 second, 0 to 10 seconds, 0 to 100 seconds, and you've got beats and fractions of beats as well for tempo-based timing. Let's keep it on 1 second for the moment. So A traveling towards B. You can also start A. A can start anywhere. So A travels to B from wherever it is, wherever A is. If you have the A to B timer on, A will travel to B from its current position. Also, you can modulate the travel of A to B like that. So make it like that. So if we add some modulation, the modulation goes from A to B, from wherever A is, and the amount of modulation shows how far it's going to travel from A towards B. So if it's full and A is at the maximum left position and A is at its minimum position, and you've got modulation at full, A will travel all the way to B and back. If it's only half, it'll only travel halfway to B. It'll travel from wherever it is halfway to B. And you can combine the two. So let's put about 3 seconds in here, 4 or 5 seconds, and let's do a bit longer, 4 or 5 seconds, and then you can hear it traveling towards halfway towards A to B from wherever it is while it's traveling towards B. So there you go. Just with those two parameters, you can do make a lot of different noises. The other thing you can do is change the phase of B as A is traveling towards it. So let's try. This is a good example. Actually, we can take a ramp up on A and we can put a ramp down on B. And as A travels towards B, the two will cancel each other out until in the center you have silence. And that's what we seem to have. Yes, very nearly silence there. So they are nothing at all. That's because A is cancelling out B, or B is cancelling out A. If we change the phase of B now, because they're two ramp waveforms, we get a square waveform when B gets to 180 degrees. If we modulate B, the phase of B, we get pulse width modulation. And so we put B, say, somewhere around 70 degrees, and then give it some modulation. we get pulse width modulation. Actually, I've just realised if I zoom out, we've got some filter on. No, we haven't. That's okay. That's good. No, there isn't no filters. Good. So back to the oscillator. So there you are. You can have two different shapes on the waveforms. A can travel towards B. The phase of B can change, and you get all sorts of different wave shapes as a result of this. Oops, flicking things out with my dragging. So that's just the oscillator. Before we do anything else, that's just the dual oscillator. We haven't added any other features here. So I'm going to just reset it back to sine waves to keep it simple. I'm going to use my finger because this pen doesn't always work very well. Reset the phase of B back to that. So now we've got a nice sine wave. So we can now, we've got FM as well, where we can modulate the frequency of the oscillator with one of our modulators. And we can mix various modulators together. I'm going to zoom out here, turn up the frequency of LFO1. So if I put LFO2 really slow and LFO1 really fast like it is now, we mix the two together. And here at the end, you can set the amount of the summed. And the button underneath, bi-uni, that's bipolar or unipolar, and bipolar will go negative to positive. And unipolar will just stay in the positive range. When it's unipolar, you can add an envelope to it as well. So we can have envelope 1 added in. So there you are. And so you can mix any of these. You can, anywhere where there's a blue dial, that's a modulator. Some places you'll see we have dual dials, dual dials with an inner dial and an outer ring, like you get on the mixing desk. The inside one is nearly always the modulation. The little icon tells you whether it's LFO1 or LFO2. But you can use the matrix here. I selected that by tapping on the modulation matrix button in the menu. You can route these to various different places. So if I wanted LFO1 in the A to B time instead of LFO2, I could go to A to B time, oscillator A, B time, switch LFO1 there. And there we are. We have LFO1 modulating instead of LFO2. Every time you want to go back to the default settings, just hit default. The default settings are pretty much good enough for almost everything. But you have the modulation matrix if you need to just get a little bit more complex. So there's your FM. You can do a lot with the FM. Have good fun with that. Turn it down. Then we have tuning. So tuning, the outer dial is fine tune. Goes up and down an octave. Double tap to set to 0, like I said before. The inner dial is coarse tune. And double tap again, like I said. If you want to set exact time, exact cents, you can type in the number of cents you want to tune by into the number by tapping on the number and typing it in. Also, as you can hear, the oscillator is tracking the keyboard when I play MIDI notes. If I turn off this button here, that turns off the keyboard tracking. Now we've got an oscillator that just sits at whatever frequency we tell it to be at. And that can be used for all sorts of different effects, especially when you're doing drum sounds and things like that. So there's the keyboard button. Portamento. Actually, I haven't got if we go to go out of the editor a minute and switch on legato mode here, that's portamento works more obviously. And portamento can go very slow. You can have great fun if it's in poly mode with some the rules that the engine uses are sort of move to the nearest note. So wherever the current voice was, it will move to the nearest note at that speed, and it'll move very slowly at full speed. There you go. And then finally, we have the noise mixer. From white to oscillator to white noise, and we can mix it in. So there you are. That's the oscillator. Moving on to the filter or filters. Let's zoom into them. Layer has 2 filters per layer. They're both state variable filters with low pass, high pass, band pass, and notch. Usual resonance control and cutoff controls. Key scale. This does what you think it does. It scales the filter to the keyboard so that when I turn up resonance a bit, so that you can hear it tuned. Right. We allow the filter to ring, because then it's more like a real analog filter, and you can do some interesting things with ringing filters if you know about synthesis, and you can have some fun with them. So be careful when you turn the resonance up full, because it will ring very loudly, and that is the deliberate part of the design. It's not a bug. So now you'll be able to hear the tuning. Turn off the tuning. The resonance stays where it is, and the filter cutoff stays where it is. To put the tuning on, when it's up full, it's 1-to-1 with the keyboard, and at any other point, it's just some ratio. Then you have, I'm going to turn down resonance a bit. Cutoff. We have the modulation. If I turn modulation up, nothing will happen yet, because we haven't given it a mix of modulators yet. So the same way that we deal with the oscillator, so the filter works the same way. You've got a bunch of modulation sources which you can sum together. Oscillator 1, so sum with oscillator 2. Let's just turn down oscillator 2's speed a bit. Really slow. There you go. oscillator here so we can hear what we're doing. Speed up oscillator 1. Better. So you've got a nice little mix there. Got the envelope. And at the end of the filter section modulators here, we've got a contour. It's the multiply button there, the multiply symbol there, and the white dial with envelope 2. If we go to envelope 2, oh, actually, first of all, let's put the oscillators back. Right. So envelope 2's got a long decay on it, I think, but yes, it's got 5 seconds nearly. So now we're contouring the filter modulation with envelope 2, and what that means is that envelope 2 will control the amplitude of the amount of modulation, so it will gradually fade out after 5 seconds. There you go. So turn that off and it stays on constant. And so play with that and you'll see what it means, see how it works. And that's the master amount for the filter is the middle dial in the cutoff. Turn that off for the sec. Then we have velocity. Velocity isn't velocity to cutoff. In layer, it's velocity to modulation amount. And so the harder you hit the key, the more modulation is applied to the filter. Which I think is more interesting than just having it to cut off. If you just want cut off, then you can put a fixed envelope or just a DC through it. I'm hitting the key at different velocities here. So that's how the filter works. So the filter 2 works in exactly the same way, which gives me a chance to show you something else actually. So if you hold down on the background of any of these sections, you will get the clipboard for that section. Clipboard here allows you to copy the whole layer or copy the filters, and it also gives you the option to paste to the other filters. Clipboard here, copy the layer or copy the mixer, paste the filter because there happens to be something in the filter clipboard already. So if I said to copy oscillator, then we went up to the clipboard up here, it would say paste to oscillator. And we could go to another layer or another instrument and paste the oscillator settings from this layer into that one. So I can do here, I can say copy filter 1. And there's a shortcut so you don't have to keep tapping the button over here. Just hold the button again and you say paste to filter 2. And now I've copied filter 1 settings to filter 2. That clipboard's actually more useful than you might think it is. And when you get used to using it, it speeds up editing a lot. So filter 2. At the moment we're listening to filter 1. If we change filter 2, nothing happens. Nothing happens because it's not in the chain at the moment, and the reason it's not in the chain is because the mixer has mixed to only show to allow filter 1. And the way the mixer works, it's time to show you that now, is it has 2 submixers, 1 and 2, and then it has a mix of those submixers, so it's like a sub-submixer. But it's very simple really. The 2 submixers mix between filter 1 and the oscillator. So there's the oscillator only. If we change filter 1 now, nothing happens because we're only listening to the oscillator. This mixer here has mixed out the filter. So it's filter on the left, oscillator when it's clockwise, anti-clockwise filter. And you can have any mix you like of those. Same with filter 2. Filter only, oscillator only. But if we try and listen to filter 2, at the moment we still won't hear anything, and we still won't hear the oscillator because we haven't brought filter 2 into the mix. And how do we do that? We use this dial over here. When this dial is in the middle, you've got equal amounts of filter 2 and filter 1. Except we've got the oscillator there for filter 2. So that's equal amounts. Anti-clockwise, it is filter 1. Clockwise, it's filter 2 only. If you want to run filter 1 into filter 2, then you set this dial fully clockwise so that you're listening to the output of filter 2. Right. You're not hearing filter 1 at all because it's not doing anything. I'm going to simplify this a bit. There's filter 2. Now, when you're listening to filter 2, you can also run filter 1 into filter 2, and you do that with this button here. This dial here, filter 1 into filter 2, it says, and it's the section in between the two filters. You turn that up. Filter 1 is now running through filter 2. So the two are now running in series with each other. Filter 1. Filter 2. And filter 1 going through it. So, using a combination of these two dials here to mix the filters with the oscillator if you want to, otherwise just keep them fully anti-clockwise, and the mix of 1 and 2 dial there, you can make any combination of serial or parallel filters. Yeah, one more thing to show in the filter. Go back to filter 2. So now we're listening to the output of filter 2. I'm going to turn down filter 1 a little bit. That dialogue that keeps popping up is because I'm using this pen, and it's calling up the assign dialogue, which I'll talk about later. The window, the panel there. When I press too long without moving the pen. Yes, filter 1. So here's filter 1 going into filter 2. We've got notch on filter 2. We want loop parts on both. So on the way through, you can actually add some distortion to filter 1 in the form of a wave folder, which is quite nice, quite fun. the wave folder, distortion, and it has a symmetry amount which moves the DC point of the wave to get different harmonics in the wave folding. It's very subtle, but it's worth playing with sometimes. And you can also modulate the wave folder with any of the modulation sources that's in the mod matrix. At the moment, it's set up for envelope 1. Envelope 1. So there you go. That's the filters. The important thing to remember with the filters, of course, is the mixer settings, because and particularly this dial here, the mix of 1 and 2 dial, that is the mix of filters 1 and 2, and you can mix between filter 1 and go to filter 2, and you can also modulate between the two of them. You can have particular fun with things like that when you move the modulation rate right up into audio territory. Did you see what I did there? Actually, something I haven't shown you yet. When you're editing the dials, smooth that up there again, and I'll put the tuning out again. So when you're turning the dials, vertical movements are a coarse adjustment, and you can adjust the sensitivity of that to how you like by using a slider in the settings. So you can adjust the sensitivity of the dial, all the dials in the editor. So when you move left and right, it turns into a fine adjustment. And so if you move near where you want to go, so I'm going to try and tune this oscillator to the filter now. So I'm now quite near. Now I start going left and right. Tuned. So the thing is not to try and do it by pushing the dial up and down. You want to go up and down and get near to where you are, and then go left and right. So there you go. Filters, mixer, and some modulators so far. We're almost done. I'm going to show you a bit more of the mixer now. Let's listen to filter 1. Oops. Yeah. So, what else have we got in the mixer? We've got pan, which pans the sound left or right, plus modulation for pan. Again, that's in the mod matrix, so you can set whatever modulator you like. Velocity to amplitude. And overall volume. That's the same parameter as the volume in the slider, volume slider in the layer strip. And then you've got the AM section, the amplitude modulation section. For this, I'm going to switch over to the sine wave. Turn off all the extraneous stuff which isn't needed here, so that it's not confusing. In fact, how about we'll just listen to the sine wave and nothing, the oscillator and nothing else. So that's the oscillator, the sine wave going directly to the mixer. I did that by moving from filter to oscillator there. Right. So amplitude modulation. Slow down oscillator LFO1. There we are. That's an envelope. If you go into audio territory with the LFOs, and start adding sort of bell effects as it becomes more like a ring modulator. So there you go. That's LFO1. LFO2, same thing. And then you can also put the contour envelope on it. So that's LFO2 again there. So we'll try that one out. So from full modulation to none. You can hear it fading out. Or if it was just vibrato or tremolo, it would just be. I think it's actually possible to get a real ring modulator on here by using an oscillator in here with the mod matrix. So what is that? It's amplitude contour. So we'll put LFO1 in there. And that's multiplying whatever comes out of the amps. So, yeah. And the problem is you can't envelope it. So. But hey, it's still a ring mod. So what else? What else is left now to show? So deal with the. I think we'll go on and move on to the envelopes. Envelopes. Let's start by just adding a little bit of FM into the system here on envelope 1 so that we can see it actually doing something, or hear it actually doing something. Zoom into the envelopes. Just like other sections, other parameters in layer, you've got the range control to set the dials to 1, 10 or 100 seconds. That means that you could have attack times, decay times of 100 seconds. That's 200-second loop time there. If it was right down to 0, it would take 200 seconds to go through its cycle. That's quite a long time, so probably won't ever need that much. And you've got the usual attack, decay, sustain, and release. No, we're not listening to the. Turn off the pitch a minute. We're on the volume here, so. A bit decay, a bit release. Usual. And put the that pitch back. So the other two envelopes are aux 1 and 2, and they can be routed to most of the modulation sources. So here's our pitch envelope. One of the things you can do with the envelopes is delay the start of the envelope. So you can delay the onset of the envelope so that you can have different layers starting at different times. So that's starting the envelope 1, which is controlling frequency modulation, and it's happening 1 second after I press the key. So there you are. We can even put a delay on the actual amplitude envelope, and that wouldn't start until 1 second after I press the key, and then 1 second after that the FM will start. Actually, that's wrong. They both start at 1 second, which is of course correct. You have to put the FM at 2 seconds for that to happen. There you go. So, delay parameter is an extra parameter which a lot of envelopes don't have in some sense. Another thing you can do is you can loop the attack and decay portions of the envelope. As long as sustain is set to 0, it's right at the bottom, infinite, minus infinity dB, the loop button will show up as highlighted when you tap on it and with white. If you can't loop, if it won't loop properly, it shows up as red. That's just to warn you that the loop isn't correctly set up. It'll only work properly if attack and decay, if the sustain is 0, because it has to loop around the attack and decay sections. You can have any times you like here. They're almost useless oscillators, except they don't change the pitch of the key. So they're like fixed frequency oscillators. There's like a ramp, nice little ramp there. The curve. So that's it. That's about the envelopes. There's not much more to say there, really. They can be applied to all over anywhere where there's a modulation source, you can put an envelope. So the other modulators left to talk about are the LFOs, which we've already played with a little bit, and the random level generator. Let's do that one. Let's play with random level generator. So again, a nice place to illustrate that is in the FM section. By so it's like a random sample and hold in a modular synth. And again, you've got the 100, 1000, 10,000 range, because right up to 10 kilohertz, which is almost noise, right down to 100,000 seconds, even 1,000 second cycles, which is too long to wait, so we'll put it on 2 seconds. So that's pretty simple. And the inner dial in this is a smoother. So it's a little smoothing filter inside the inner dial. That way you can smooth out the hard edges of the random changes. So that's it. That can be applied to the filter or the amplitude or the pitch or wherever you like. And again, it's got fractions of a beat for time-based modulations. And oscillators. Well, low frequency oscillators rather. We've already been here, and they're both exactly the same, so I'll just talk about one of them. Which one did I just set up? LFO1. Okay. Well, we've been playing with the speed already. Go right up to audio. And a bit more depth. Ooh, aliasing frequencies there, which is quite nice. And you can select the waveform in the same way as you do with the oscillator, the main oscillator. You tap on the center of the dial where that waveform is shown, and you get the selector, change. So you've also got the buttons, key follow, where the frequency of the oscillator will follow the key and get faster as you go up the keyboard. So you can tune, if you're using a tuned oscillator, if you kind of tuned the modulator to some, let's put it up here. So there you got sort of tuned FM following the keyboard, simple FM, but add that to a contour envelope and you've got quite a lot of fun. You can also change the starting phase of the oscillator, the low frequency oscillator. Let's go really slow here. So this starts from this will start from the center line, from the 0 position, go up and then come down. Oh, hang on a minute. Retrigger starts if you push retrigger, it'll always start at 0 phase. So it goes up and then down. And we move it to 90 degrees. Oops, 90 degrees-ish. That's at the top of this slope, and it goes down. And there, so you can set where you want the modulation to start. Retrigger starts the low frequency oscillator at 0 phase whenever you press a key. Turn off retrigger and it's just running free. Sync synchronizes the phase of all the oscillators, all the different layers of LFOs in chords. So if you play a chord, all the voices will be synced together. If sync's off, then it's just running free. Then all the voices can sort of start wherever they like, wherever the phase happens to be in the oscillator. And it's a completely different effect. That's it. That's actually it.